Welcome to another exciting episode of Knife Chats with Tobias, almost live. This episode was recorded in front of a live studio audience. Well, it was recorded in front of a live cat. Any case, hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of Knife Chats with Tobias, almost live. This episode is going to be a little bit of a departure from previous episodes in that the bulk of this episode is going to focus on Queen Cutlery Company, specifically looking at the knives that I own by Queen Cutlery. And this is actually inspired by me watching a video from Jersey Knife Guy Pete, where he was talking about his Shatton Morgan knives, and he showed all of his Shatton Morgan knives, and so I thought I would do the same thing with my Queen knives. That turned into a 45-minute video that was talking about, the demise of Queen Cutlery. And, I did not want to just throw the video away, so I figured I'm just going to roll that into an almost live, because those usually last for about an hour anyway. So that's what I decided to do with that. And before I go into the Queen Cutlery portion of this, I'm going to be talking about the some of the knives I picked up in June that I hope to eventually get around to making a video of. So kind of a sneak peek of those knives. But one other thing I want to do here is I've come up with this idea of something I want to do with future almost lives. And so what I would like you to do as members of my subscribers here, if you got a question that you want to ask me, leave it in the comment below, and I will try and answer it in one of the future almost lives. It's going to be like an almost live of me answering questions from subscribers. Now, I'm not going to be able to answer every question, but I'll definitely try and answer as many as I can basically in an allotted hour. And so we'll see how that goes. And hopefully when I'm answering those questions, I'll also be able to show you a knife that was being talked about by that question. Now, I don't have every knife in the world, and I don't intend on owning every knife in the world, so sometimes I'm just not going to be able to answer a question, but I'll see what I can do. And I would like to try and kick that off by like August or so, get a question out there. And for those looking for the membership, it should be happening soon. I'm still working on content. It's been a very busy June, and it's turning into, it was a very busy May, and it's turning into a very busy June. So usually things slow down in the summer, but that has not been my case this year. So it's just been kind of rocking and rolling, and so as much as I want to get that membership up and running, it might take a few more days because I want to do it right. In any case, stick around for this month's June almost live. Starting right now. Let's flip that camera around. Okay, before we get to the meat of this almost live, which is really a look at Queen knives, a look at my Queen knives, I thought I would go over some of my recent purchases that may or may not turn into a future video. I wish I could do a video on every knife I picked up, but some of the knives don't warrant a video, and other knives I just it's like I keep postponing it until I get around to something else, and then I just never come back to the knife, even though it is deserving of a video. In any case, let's talk about the ones that I have in front of me here. This one I know I will eventually get into a what I'm calling what am I calling them? Sack snippets or something like that. It's where I just do a very short video on a particular sack that I picked up. This one is on the Tinker frame, and this is a design from Brian Wilhoit. I think it's they call it the Flag series or something like that, but this is one that is supposed to look like a World War II bomber. As you can see, I haven't opened it yet, but I will be doing a video on this, well, that'll be fun to look at when the time comes. I did post a picture of this one already on my community page, and that's the Rough Rider Bullfrog. I have plans for doing a video on this one. Well, actually, I think I'm going to turn this knife over to Skip the Show and see what he thinks about the knife. And that's what I might be doing in the future with a lot of my modern knives that I have. I don't have that many, but when I do pick up a modern knife, I think I'm going to just give it over to Skip the Show and let him do a review of it, because I think Skip likes the modern folders more than I do. But this is I bought it partly because I really like the box, Bullfrog. Also like bullfrogs, but also I kind of like the G10 scales on here, or G10 handles, whatever way you want to call it. If I keep it myself, I'll probably pop off the pocket clip. I'm not crazy about pocket clips, and really just kind of in the way as far as I'm concerned, but really smooth action on that blade. It's got a good lockup too. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it for Skip the Show. I will let him do the video on this, and so you'll see more about the Bullfrog when Skip talks about it, probably sometime in July. Then we got these other knives here, which are kind of interesting, and I do want to do videos on them, but in case I don't get around to them, I just thought I'd break them out now. Okay, and well, we'll start with these two in the back here, though this one is pretty cool also. Actually, I was contacted by JB of Big Red EDC fame, and he was asking me a little bit about the Picnic Pal. I sent him some information about them. I know they were around back in the 50s and 60s, but I don't know enough information about them to give a really good solid history on the knives. What they are little take-apart knives that were made by Colonial, and there's actually two different patterns here. This front one here is the Picnic Pal. The back one here is the Picnic King. And well, they're a little bit different than each other. The first one up here, the Pal, as you can see, it's got three implements. Same here. The Picnic King, though, comes with a spoon. And the way this works is, well, they're take-apart knives. So let's take a look at the Picnic Pal. Just push them and they come apart. So you can use every implement by themselves. The main on both of these knives is a blade, is the knife blade. Basically your spear point blade. This has a brass liner going on. And then on the back side here you have the fork. And if you notice, these appear to be carbon steel. These are not stainless steel, and I don't know if that's because of the age or what. And then the other blade you have here is actually the cap lifter and can opener, and this leads me to believe that these came out in the late 50s or early 60s. I think that's where I first started seeing these showing up on knives. I could be wrong, but that's about where I think they show up. Now on this one, the Picnic King, actually, you have the fork up front instead of the cap lifter. And as you can see, these are stainless steel. And this one also has stainless steel liners going on. So the whole knife is stainless steel, as opposed to this one, which seems to be an older one with carbon steel and brass liners. And then the main blade here in the middle again, and like we saw before, the spoon on the back side. I believe these came out a little later, probably in the late 60s, maybe into the 70s, but I just don't know enough right now to do anything other than speculate, and I'd rather find out a little bit more information about them. So when I do, I'll do a more full review on my Picnic Pal and my Picnic King. which are pretty fun to take apart knives. And yeah, you know, kind of like the original hobos. I don't know. Any case, let's move on to the other two knives here. Okay, let me pull this out of the way and we'll get to this little knife here. And notice the shield right away, Kenny's shoes. And if you notice here, there's a little hole there, which is where the bail should have been, but this doesn't have a bail. And it's an easy out knife, and it features your faithful cap lifter screwdriver here, and then a nice spear blade. And well, you see the Kenny Shoes shield. This is definitely a economy knife, an advertising knife from back in the day. And you see here it is out of the Syracuse Knife Company, out of Syracuse, New York. This is the first run of the old Syracuse Knife Company. Later, Syracuse knives were made in Poland, actually. From what I understand, the brand Syracuse Knife Company, it was one of those A-Caster brands, Adolf Caster, and basically it's one of many companies that was kind of umbrellaed under Camillus. So you've got Syracuse Knife Company and Kent. Those are two that are well known. Also, obviously, Camco and Camillus. Yeah, I gotta read up a little bit on Syracuse Knife Company, and I'll give you a little bit more information on this. But I believe this was made sometime in the 1930s. I bought it mainly because, well, Kenny Shoes and Syracuse Knife Company. I didn't have a Syracuse Knife Company knife yet, so I went ahead and bought it. And what I want to do is hopefully try and find one of those bales to put back in there and kind of complete the knife. We'll see how that works. And now let's move on to this little fixed blade back here, which is kind of cool. And this knife also has a little bit of an interesting story behind it too, because basically I had some plumbing work done in the house, and the plumber came by and to fix what I needed to have fixed. And he saw my knife collection. He goes, "Oh, you collect knives?" And it's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I got this knife that I don't know a whole lot about, and I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about it." And I said, "Well, sure, bring it over and I'll take a look at it." And I thought that would be the end of it, but no. He comes back and goes, "I got that knife I wanted to show you about. It's from a Voss Cutlery." And I thought, okay, this is going to be one of those frost knives that came from wherever, and I gotta pretend to be excited about it. And truly, this is, as you can see there, Voss Cutlery Company, Germany. And well, it's obviously not one of the modern Voss Cutlery Company knives. And if you notice here, it does look like a throwing knife, which is what he thought it was. He thought it was a throwing knife. But it's got a stacked leather handle with these spacers on there, little brass guard, and a pommel that you can actually remove fairly easily. And he's actually removed the pommel before. It's got a rat tail tang going through the middle of it and everything. But what really caught me is Voss Cutlery Company, Germany. Now, best I can tell, these knives were actually made back around the 1970s or so. And they were actually, Voss Cutlery was one of the names used by the Bertram Cutlery Company or Hen and Rooster. And apparently they made a nice little throwing knife. It's not a really big knife by any stretch of the imagination. You see here, comes in right at a little over 7.5 inches. And the blade, overall length of the blade is a little over 4 inches. There is really no cutting edge. I think somebody might have sharpened this at one time or another, but it really, you can see here that the cutting edge would start somewhere up around there before you actually start getting any cutting portion on the blade. So maybe the first, the the front 2 inches of the blade have an edge that could probably be sharpened, but that's not really, well, do you need more for a throwing knife? Probably not, but it looks like it'd be a pretty cool neck knife also, though. Could you imagine using that for a neck knife? Anyway, the cool thing is I say, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's Voss Cutlery out of Germany. And I said it's probably from around the 1970s or something. He says, and goes, what do you think of it? I said, it looks pretty cool. And goes, keep it. So that's why this knife is in my hand today, because he said it'll go better with your collection than just sitting in my toolbox. So that was pretty cool of him. You know, he came here to fix something of me. I paid for all that, and then I get this discount of a knife here. You know, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, let's move on to Queen. And now for a brief word from our sponsors.
Get around on Wall Street with my high-fashion model wife. I woke up dry under African skies, just me and my Swiss Army knife. Oh, hi everybody out there. Skip the show here, proprietor of the Volcano Club. And have we got a deal for you this summer? Show us your sack. That's what it is. Show us your sack all summer, and you're going to get a free complimentary drink from our good friend Knife Chats with Tobias. It sounds kind of dirty, but he says right here, just bring in your Swiss Army knife. That's the sack, S-A-K, Swiss Army knife. Show it to me or the bartender or one of my lovely waitresses, and you'll get a free complimentary drink. Compliments of Knife Chats with Tobias. So that's all you got to do. Anytime this summer, just come in with your Swiss Army knife, show it to us, and you knife chatters out there are going to get yourself a free drink. Compliments of Knife Chats with Tobias. And remember, life's full of choices. Choose the Volcano Club. Skip out. How was that one? Was that better? My collar. You could have told me before I went on to my collar up.
We now return to our show. Okay, I know your eyes are rolling right now as you see toothpicks in front of you. It's like, oh no, not another video on large toothpicks. And you're wrong. This is not another video on large toothpicks. It's just going to happen to have a bunch of large toothpicks in it. This actually is a video on Queen-made USA knives. It just so happens that most of my Queen-made USA-made knives happen to be large toothpicks. But what I'm looking at are knives that were made by Queen before the Daniels family cutlery owned them, and Queen knives that were made after Daniels family cutlery owned them. Now the period before Daniels family cutlery, that would be periods before September 25th, 2012. And these are the very last years of the Servotronics era for Queen. I don't know when Queen was first bought by Servotronics. It's somewhere on my notes, but I didn't go and dig that out. All of these knives were made probably after 2000, somewhere up to 2012. Now, in 2012, on September 25th, 2012, Servotronics sold Queen to Daniels Family Cutlery. Daniels Family Cutlery is actually located in Ohio, but they basically bought Queen in Titusville, Pennsylvania, factory and everything, and continued to use the Titusville factory up until January 11th, 2018, when Daniels Family basically filed for bankruptcy and stopped making Queen knives. And then, as we know, Queen is, quote unquote, I just made air quotes, reborn as a new trademark of Smoky Mountain Knife Works on May 7th, 2020. So the current production Queen knives and also Queen City knives are actually a product being made by SMKW, and we know that some of those knives have been made in the USA, most likely by Baron Son, but most of the Queen and Queen City knives have actually been made in China, most likely at the Smoky Mountain Knife Works factory for Rough Rider knives. Now, what brought about this video is this knife right here. This is a Queen large toothpick in the honey amber jig bone, and really nice knife. And Pete from Jersey Knife Guy showed this knife when he was looking at all of his Shatton Morgan knives, and Shatton Morgan knives were at one time made by Queen. And he showed that, and I was like, yeah, that's a really nice toothpick. I got one just like it. And said maybe I should show my Queen knives again. And he said, yeah, you should do that. And so I'll start off by showing my Shatton Morgan large toothpick, which, as you can tell, is not exactly the same as the Queen large toothpick. But I do believe this is one made by Queen back in, well, we can see the year here because Shatton Morgan put the year of production on the back of this knife. If you see it there, I can get it to show. In any case, right there, 2010. There we go, 2010. So that's why, and you see here also, Titusville, Pennsylvania, Shatton Morgan Cutlery Company. And Shatton Morgan Cutlery Company would also be a knife that was being made by Daniels Family Cutlery later. I do not have a Daniels Family Cutlery Shatton Morgan knife, but I believe the new Shatton Morgan knives are actually being made in Ohio by Bluegrass Cutlery. And I think the Daniels family might still own the trademark for it, either that or the folks at Bluegrass Cutlery on the Shatton Morgan trademark now. In any case, we're talking Queen. And so this was a Queen made knife, really excellent knife. I did a video on that. But what I want to get to is, and this is really the focus here, is, well, first of all, show all my Queen knives because that's what Jersey Pete wanted me to do. And then also to talk a little bit about the difference in quality between the Servotronics era Queen knives versus the Daniels Family Cutlery era Queen knives. And part of this is going to be a little unfair because I only have two knives from Daniels Family Cutlery, and they are not bad knives, but they are also not large toothpicks. Whereas this is the only knife I have from Queen that is not a large toothpick, or from the Servotronics era of Queen that is not a large toothpick. So I am kind of comparing apples and oranges here. But in any case, we'll talk about these two in a second a little bit more. And let's move on to a couple Queen-made knives that are not trademarked Queen, and also not a Shatton Morgan. I'll talk about that one too, I guess. But let's go on to the other two first. Now, the first one here is a Woodpecker. That's actually what it's called. And if you notice here, it is a serialized knife, 058. I believe I was told they do not know exactly how many were made. They don't know if it was 100 that were made or 250 were made or what. But it is a knife that was made for Smoky Mountain Knife Works. They also do not know exactly when it was made. They believe it was probably in the early 2000s or late 1990s. I suspect more likely the later 2000s. At first, when I saw this, I did not even think it was a Queen-made knife, because if you notice, the shape of the clip blade is not what you see on the number 20 Queen toothpick. Definitely a different shape for the clip. This is like a midpoint clip blade versus a very long Turkish style or California clip. This is almost a Skinner blade, the way it's shaped. But it is considered more or less, it could almost be like a drop point Skinner, but I guess we could say we'll just go with Turkish clip. But you notice this is a much heavier blade, and the blade edge on this one is that of a woodpecker, hence the name, the Woodpecker. Nice wood handles. It's not pack of wood. I'm not exactly sure what kind of wood it was. The folks at Smoky Mountain Knife Works could not fill me in either. The only way I knew, or the only reason I suspected it being a Queen knife, was the short bolsters, which are very much a trademark of the Queen knives. Same size and everything else. So, and the build quality on this was just fantastic. You've got the lazy half stop, or the that's what I usually call it. There is that half stop, but it's not a true half stop. It's just up there. The blade definitely comes to a stop, and then you've got a pretty good snap going down. Nice kick on the blade too, so the blade is not hitting. There's no blade wrap going on, and it's really nice and tight. You can see the finish on there is quite well. I mean, the fit, really nice. Everything is well polished and everything else. And as you can tell, it is a fingerprint magnet. And I do not know what kind of blade steel was used in this or anything else. For the most part, most Queen knives in the 2000s tended to have one of two types of steel being used. The most common steel seemed to have been D2 tool steel. So D2 was the biggie. However, they also used some 420 high carbon steel on certain knives. That was during the Servotronics era, and I believe that followed over in the Daniels Family Cutlery lineup too. That they would be using a D2 tool steel for the blade for most knives that were made. Another knife I have here is another Smoky Mountain Knife Works knife, but in this case it is in the Colonel Coon lineup. By this time, this was, I think these were made right around 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. And this is in the Coon Stripe acrylic. And these are a knife, one of 250 that they made in this particular handle material in a large toothpick. But you can see very much that this is very much a Queen style toothpick. And they actually told everyone when they were having these made that they were being made by Queen. The Colonel Coon knives were being made by Queen. So you see the Colonel Coon blade edge going on there with the one of 250. And almost all of the Queen knives that were made by Queen are numbered, like one of 250. Now, they do not actually number them somewhere on there. The only thing you know is it's one of 250. So they're not serialized, they're just numbered. At least as far as I know, that's the way it was done. And I do not know, I cannot remember if they said these were using 1095 carbon steel or if they were also being made with D2 tool steel. But I believe they were being made with D2, which is actually a semi-stainless steel. But you can tell just by looking at it that it is very much Queen in every aspect of it, other than you have here a Colonel Coon blade edge, and on the Queen knife over here you have the Queen Cutlery Company number 20 blade edge for the Queen toothpick. You see those differences? Very slight, but it is exactly the same blade. So the Colonel Coon large toothpick is basically a number 20 Queen toothpick. As you know, Colonel Coon knives continue to be made in the USA today, but they look distinctly different, if you notice right there. And that's because they're now being made by Baron Sun. And the only way you can tell the difference between an older Colonel Coon or a new Colonel Coon, well, blade edge has changed a little bit too, as you can see there. So there are definite differences between the Baron Sun Colonel Coons and the Queen made Colonel Coons. So there's several things to look for when you're looking at them. Just to keep that in mind. But all the Colonel Coon knives are still, as far as I know, made in the USA. But I wouldn't hold your breath on that it'll continue to be that way, simply because, well, if Smoky Mountain Knife Works will make a Queen knife in China, what's going to stop them from making a Colonel Coon knife in China? In any case, let's move on to, well, I'll show you the last of the Queen toothpicks I have, and then we'll move on to the other Queen knives I have. And that one is here. It's also just another number 20. You notice it's still wonderfully made, nicely fitted and everything else. And this is also a number 20 Queen toothpick. And what you see there on there is the blade etch for Queen Cutlery Company, number 20. And as far as I know, that also continues over into the Daniel's Family Cutlery lineup. But what doesn't follow over is, as far as I know, is the tank stamp. Notice the Queen Crown, Titusville, Pennsylvania, PhD2 on there. That is usually the sign that you have a knife that was made before Daniel's Family Cutlery. That's usually a good sign that it is before Daniel's Family Cutlery. The tank stamp you have going on there. Let's move on to the other Queen knife, and that is here, and this is a Queen City, but as you can tell here also, this is a prototype. This was a prototype that was made for Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I won it in a contest. I've done a video or two on there, and it's really an odd fellow when you look at it, because you've got a slanted bolster here, straight bolster on the bottom. This is a plain bolster. This is a ringed bolster, so it doesn't really match up. And I have a feeling what was going on is they were testing different ideas out on this knife, including the style of blade being used, because you notice it's got a nice Spearmaster blade. And it's got a definite half stop going on. And it's basically just your little boy's knife going on here. And it's not a bad little knife or anything. You also see there Queen City, Titusville, PA. And on the back side you see Queen Cutlery Company, Titusville, PA. And that is usually what you'll see on the Queen City knives out of Servotronics, as far as I know. So this is going to be what they were planning on, I guess, using this or thinking about a knife similar to this as a production piece or a special factory offering through Smoky Mountain Knife Works, but it never came to fruition. So this is a one and done knife, and as it was a prototype, I don't know if they did all of the finishing that they wanted to do with it, because one of the things I noticed with it is it has a bit of a blade wobble. And this was the very first Queen knife I ever got, this one here, this little boy's knife, and I liked it, and I thought I should get another Queen knife, but it would be many years before I'd finally pick one up. And that brings us to the first Queen knife that I actually purchased, and that was this one here. And I picked this one up actually around 2012, right when Queen Cutlery announced that they were going bankrupt or they were being bought by the Daniels Family Cutlery Company. And it's like, oh, I need to get a queen knife now. It kind of caught me off guard entirely. I was not expecting it to happen. And I had thought many a times to pick up a queen knife, and I just never did, thinking, well, they're going to be around forever, which was kind of silly considering I thought the same thing about Camillus, and then Camillus just, boom, disappeared in 2007. Here it was 2012, and the same thing was now happening to Queen Cutlery. The 2000 to 2010 was not a good time for knife makers in the United States. Let me put it that way. In any case, this was their, I believe it's like their honey amber jig bone. I think that's what they called it, or their something like that, or their honey burnt jig bone or something like that. I know the word honey was in there somewhere. And it was probably one of the most popular bone handles that they were using. And I still think it is just some of the most beautiful bone that you can find in a knife. Just wonderful coloring and everything else. The shield is slightly recessed in a lot of the queen knives, which is good considering how deep the grooves are in this the jigging. So the recessed shield kind of makes a little bit of sense there. The pins are nicely smooth. It's got you got a nice bevel around the edges on the bone here on the back side. You got the brass liners. And like they said, D2 tool steel with nickel silver bolsters. I believe the shield is also nickel silver. Is it pinned? I do not believe the shield is pinned. If it is, I sure don't see the pin inside. And I don't believe they were pinned. But the build quality on these was just fantastic. There was absolutely no blade wobble going on. And the blade alignment, while not perfect like everyone likes to think it should be, there's definitely no rub going on with these things. And then I came across this one later, and this is the stag bone. And you see blade alignment on that is better than this one, but everything else on this is very much in line with this one. The quality control standards on these Servotronics Queens was really fantastic. The quality of the build was really good, and everything about them just spoke of, quality and everything else. And that was the reason that people were willing to pay $80, $90, $100 for a queen knife when a similar pattern and case was going for anywhere from $50 to $60, and a knife made in China was going anywhere from $10 to $20, because the quality control, the fact that you were getting D2 tool steel and a good quality bone on the handle made all the difference. And so they were not only being made for somebody who could use them, but also for the collector's market. And that might have been part of the problem, is that collector's market and the fact that they needed to keep that quality control as high as they did. In any case, let's move on to, one more knife from Queen, and then we'll move on to Daniels Family Cutlery. Knife Chats with Tobias, in partnership with the DGE BAB Foundation, brings you this brief public service announcement.
Yee howdy, boys and girls. It's your old pal, Yakima Bob, and his best friend, Jackalope Jake. And we're back at you again, because, it's that time of year again, when everybody is out in the woods and they've got one thought in mind, and that's they want to sneak a picture of a Bigfoot. Well, I tell you what, first of all, Bigfoot is kind of a condescending name for a wonderful group of people known as Sasquatch. That's what they like to be called, Sasquatch. They don't like to be, how would you like it if somebody was making fun of your most prominent feature? So don't call them Bigfoot. If you come across one, call them Sasquatch.
and try and find out what their actual name is, because you know what? They're not all Sasquatch. That's just the tribe they belong to. There's plenty of them out there, but they like their privacy. Don't you like your privacy too? How would you like it if people just came up to your front door and started snapping pictures of you? Well, that's the way they feel when you walk out in the forest and go, I'm going to go find me a Bigfoot and I'm going to take a picture of him. And that's why they always run away from you. You don't ask them, you just say, I'm going to sneak up to them and take a picture of them. That's just not nice. So don't do that. You're not the paparazzi. How would you like it if the paparazzi was following you around? Because that's the way Sasquatch feel about you when you're trying to sneak a picture of them. It's just rude. Don't do it. And by the way, as long as you're out in the woods, don't forget to bring a whistle, and don't get eaten by a bear either. What do you say, Jake? Let's hit it!
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Don't Get Eaten by a Bear Foundation in partnership with Knife Chats with Tobias.
Don't get eaten by a bear!
After spouting all that stuff about quality control, I thought maybe it's time to break out that other Queen knife that I have that most people look at and they go, that's not Queen. Well, yeah, it's Queen. And that is a military utility knife, or MILK knife, a milk knife, a demo knife, whatever you want to call it. But this was a Queen-made demo knife from 1986, and you can see right here, Q for Queen, 1986. So I know exactly when it was made. And I tell you what, it's a solid, well-made knife, but I don't think it's as well made as the Camillus made utility knives. And one of the advantages it does have is the bail or clevis, whichever you want to call it, is nicely rounded. So this is a round wire as opposed to a pressed bent piece of steel like you find on the Camillus knife here. Notice the finish on that. Notice how this is squared off, this is slightly rounded off, so it looks like they took a little bit more time for finishing it. Also notice the way the stamping is going on there. In that case, I think Camillus did a better job with the stamping. Notice the US versus the US on the Camillus knife. And these are both from the same year. This is from 1986, and as you can tell here, Camillus 1986. The difference though is in the tools. Look at the tools on this one versus the bending of the tools on the Queen. The Queen is the bottom knife there. Notice how nice and straight everything is on the Camillus knife and how everything is kind of bent and loosey-goosey on the Queen. Now the Queen, as you can tell, this is the Camillus, and the Queen has a thicker main blade, and you'll see that follow over into the Ontario knives and even later into the colonial knives. They have a thicker main blade, but it's not necessarily a better main blade. They're both using 440A stainless steel, I believe. I think that was the, if it isn't 440A, it's a 420 stainless steel. They're not using any carbon steel or anything like that. These have been stainless for a long time. And you notice the Queen has a better polish on the blade, but does that really matter when you're talking about a military knife? Not really. The other problem with it is, like I mentioned, the folding of that can opener. I don't know why they bent it to get it in there but they did, and that's why. This is the straight one because this is from Camillus. Here's the one from Queen. Notice how it's bent. I don't know the reason behind that bending, but the thing is the modern one from Marbles also has it all bent like that, and it's something I don't really care for. And finally, the last thing you see here is this is the Camillus punch or reamer, and this is the one from Queen. And notice the difference in the length and the thickness of it. The Camillus is a little narrower, and it has a much better point, much more defined point. At first I thought this had been bent and rubbed down and stuff, but that is not the case. This has barely been used. It's a thicker blade, but it's not as much of a functional blade. So in many ways, it's nice to have the Queen demo knife, but if I had to use one, I would much rather have the Camillus demo knife. It's just a better knife than the Queen, and it's because this is not something that Queen really made a lot of, so I just don't think they did as good of a quality with it. The Ontario made ones, I believe, are also made by Queen. They look like a clone of the Queen ones. I could be wrong on that, but I believe the Ontario ones, after all, both companies were owned by Servotronics, so it might have been outsourced to Queen for the Ontario ones. And the Ontario pattern ended up going on to the ones that Colonial started making. In any case, that's the last of my Servotronics era Queen knives. Let me look at the two knives that I have from Daniel's Family Cutlery. Soon after picking up this knife, I mean really soon after picking up this one, I picked up this knife, and as you can tell, at first glance it looks like a toothpick, but no, it's twice as thick because this is a fish knife. But it is a Queen City fish knife, so it's built on the large frame, and we know it's Queen City because it says very clearly there, Queen City. And I'm not sure, well, this is a very early Daniel's Family Cutlery Queen City knife. I know it's Daniel's Family Cutlery because, well, on the back side here, it clearly is stamped 2013. And with Daniel's Family Cutlery taking over the company in September of 2012, we know that this would have been made by them. My bet is this was made from parts from the Servotronics era. So, because they bought the company pretty much lock, stock, and barrel, from what I understand. So they had the leftover parts from the Servotronics era sitting around, and they started piecing knives together before they started making their own. And the build quality of the knife is not bad. The fit and finish is not bad at all. I noticed right away, though, as where this is, I don't know, I just know it's a brown jig bone. It's not the, notice it is not the honey amber jigged or whatever they called it. And you see the corset shield there. Well, as I mentioned on these, they're all nicely recessed. I mean, it's just barely recessed. It's flush to recessed. Well, this is completely proud all the way around. There's nothing recessed on there at all. It's actually a little bit above the rest of the handle. Is it annoying? Not really. I mean, this is flush, but this, yeah, this is just slightly above or slightly proud compared to the rest of the handle. But the other transition points, like between, yeah, you could catch your nail there. And this is what was happening with these knives when Daniel's Family first got it. Everyone was checking them very closely and comparing them to the older Queen knives. And they got a little bit of a bum rap, and some of it was legitimate and some of it was not legitimate. Some of it is a preference. Is this really a problem that this is proud? Not really. It's not like it's sticking out. It's not like it's unlevel or anything. It's the same all the way around. So it's almost a preference. Some people would go, yeah, I kind of like the way that feels, that it's just a little bit above. Other people would be going, I don't know. I don't like how I'm catching my thumb on both sides of this. So, that's a choice. This is also slightly recessed. But that was the first thing I noticed also, is that, hey, the shield's a little proud. Didn't bother me. What bothered me with it, though, was, well, this blade, a little flexible. I believe this is a 420 high carbon steel, which actually makes sense when you consider we're dealing with a fish knife and you're going to be dealing around water a lot. Much better to have something stainless as opposed to carbon. But what got me was this blade. When I opened it up, notice it is not as well polished, but then it's Queen City, so that is like the slightly less quality than the regular Queen brand, the Queen City. But what bothered me is I felt a noticeable wobble in the blade, side to side wobble. And that was problematic. It's like, why do I feel a wobble in the blade? There is ever so slight, but there is a wobble in the main blade. And that was a bit of a problem. Does it do anything to the functioning of the knife? Not at all. It's not really that bad, but it is noticeable. And that was a problem, especially when it was the very first Daniel's Family knife that I picked up. Notice the alignment. Alignment is not bad at all either. This is a little bit more to the side, but the main blade is pretty straight. But I did notice that there was a little bit of a wobble in the main blade. And that made me think twice. Do I really want to buy another Queen knife if it's from Daniel's Family Cutlery? And, well, I did get around to buying one. And that's this one here. A wonderful Barlow. Again, the fit and finish is really nice. If you notice, it's got IKC on there. That is from iKnife Collector. And this was a basically a club knife. iKnife Collector is a group of people who, talk about knives a lot. And I used to be very involved with them. I haven't been involved with them as much recently as I used to be, and that was mainly had to do with my internet connection more than anything else. But in any case, beautiful burnt orange handled bone, and it's a really nice bone. Again, it has D2 tool steel blades, but if you notice, the polish on this blade is not the same as what you see on the other ones. This is a satin finished blade. Maybe that's what they were shooting for, and that was probably to keep the price down. You see that, as far as I can tell, that is a D2 tool steel also, but you see the new Queen DFC logo, and that's usually what you see on a Daniel's Family Cutlery Queen knife. You'll see DFC added to the logo, and if the box is with it, you'll see that on the box too, Queen DFC. The older Queen boxes do not have that. What I did like about this knife is the blade options on it, because like I mentioned, you got the Spearmaster blade on the Barlow, and again, for some reason, the main blade has that same wobble that I had on the fish knife, except now the main blade is on the other channel. But then you have a nice worn cliff on the back side, and it's tight. And that's also where I can't say I'm comparing the same kind of knives, because if you notice, both of these are two-bladed knives from the Daniel's Family Cutlery era, And all of my other queen knives, with the exception of this queen knife, all have a single blade. So, and all of those have a single blade that's tight, but both of these have two blades with one blade having a very slight wobble to it. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. And if I would have bought a two-bladed older queen knife, would I run into the same problem? I don't know. So I can't really give an honest opinion of that. All I can say is what I have noticed with the knives that I have. But you notice also, nice half stop. Really good movement, with the exception of that slight wobble. And is that blade the same? Yeah, pretty much the same blade. You have the same blade that I had on the boy's knife, which makes sense. The frame is about the same size too. Wouldn't doubt if it's the exact same frame, matter of fact. I would give the pull on this one probably around, well, the second part is around a 7 or so, but getting out to here is around a 4 or 5. That's about a 3 or a 4, and that's about a 5 or 6 here. So not nearly as much pull on this one as on this knife. This has a much stronger pull. At least on the main blade. Yeah, on all blades. So the pull is a little lighter than what I have on this knife with the same style of blade. But again, one blade versus two blades. All I can really say honestly is I found these to be not quite up to the same quality as my earlier queens, but the difference was ever so slight. I know some people have made it sound like these things were just a travesty, and that might have helped cause the company to end up folding, simply because it was getting so much bad press over the quality not being there. But to me, if there was a drop in quality, it was ever so slight compared to what was going on before. And so I think, just to sum this up, I want to talk a little bit about what really killed Queen cutlery. Was it Daniel's family cutlery? I don't really think so. I get it that those last 5 years, Queen was already on life support, and they were catching, Daniel's family cutlery was catching crap about the quality control dropping, but I don't think it was that dramatic of a drop. As a matter of fact, I got a feeling that that quality control had started dropping even before DFC took over. It's the same thing with what you have with case knives today, that people are always talking about the quality isn't what it used to be. I think the real problem is Queen just got squeezed out of both of the main knife buying markets. The first one being the collector's market. First of all, Case pretty much has a lock on the collector's market. Yes, other knives are collected, but when people think of collecting USA-made knives, Case is probably number one. It has been for the longest time and will remain that way for a while. At the same time, though, Great Eastern Cutlery was out there now, and they were definitely making a mark, and they were not really making a dent against Case so much as they were Queen, because Queen knives were priced just a little bit less than a Great Eastern knife. And a lot of people are looking at Great Eastern going, well, Great Eastern knife is better than Queen. And the price isn't that much different. And that was an argument that I was hearing at the time when Queen was going under in 2012 even. People were saying, I'm not going to buy a Queen. Why buy a Queen when I can buy a Great Eastern? A Great Eastern's a better knife. And I'm sure other people heard that argument. And the other people you would hear arguments from is, I'm not going to buy either of those knives because I can buy a case for half the price, and I like my case knives. So this case has had a mark or has had a lock on the collector's knife market for a good 30 or 40 years, maybe even longer than that. Case knives just have that market really locked up tight, and they know how to do it. So quality control is not as big of an issue with the case knives as it was the higher end knives that were costing sometimes as much as twice as much as a case knife. And at that point, people were being very nitpicky on what they were going to collect. And so Great Eastern started killing off Queen slowly. And what's worse is Queen at one time was a quality knife that users would buy to use, but now there were plenty of other knives out there that were as good as a Queen knife that were out there and that people were buying and using. And let's face it, a lot of those knives were coming out of China, and they were like $10 and $20 knives. And for your typical knife user, they're looking at it going, am I going to spend $100 for a USA made knife, or am I going to spend $15 for a crappy China knife that I'm going to lose anyway? And so Queen is definitely not going to make the mark there. But also for the USA crowd, the people who are like, no, I just want a good USA made knife. Well, there was Case at half the price, and then you also had the Baron Sun knives, and this is one from around 2010 or so, and it's like $30 or $40 for this knife? Or do I want to spend $90 for this knife? I mean, the argument for the user is like, I'll just spend $30 for this USA made knife, and I'll use the crap out of it because I'm not going to spend $90 for a knife that I might ruin. And so I got a feeling that's really more of what happened to Queen, is it lost its market. It was not good enough for the high-end collector. It was overpriced for your basic USA-made knife collector who will be more than satisfied with case. And it was just too overpriced for the everyday USA-made knife, for the everyday carry, everyday casual knife buyer. And I think that's really what killed Queen. When Daniel's family picked it up, they basically gave it an extra 5 years of life. In any case, that's my ending on the demise of Queen cutlery and my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on why they think Queen went out. I hope you enjoyed looking at the Queen knives I have. Sorry that there were so many toothpicks, but hey, I collect toothpicks. Oh, and just a statement of the obvious. Well, there's obviously the modern knives that were showing up on the market that were not doing a bit of good for any company that was making traditional knives. So Benchmade, Spyderco, Kershaw, all of these companies were taking a big bite out of traditional knives. So Queen's days were definitely numbered.
And that brings us to the conclusion of another exciting episode of Knife Chats with Tobias Almost Live. If you liked what you saw, give us that thumbs up and leave us a comment. We always like to hear from you here at Knife Chats with Tobias. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next exciting episode of Knife Chats with Tobias is up and running. But thanks again, and we'll see you soon.